Anthony Grassi here for College.town at the 2026 NCAA Convention. Happy to sit down with Wisconsin River Falls Director of Athletics, Crystal Lanning. Crystal, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So we sit here, we are 10 days, 12 days post-football national championship.
Yeah.
What has the last couple of weeks been like?
Last couple of weeks has been hectic in a lot of good ways. So even going back to the playoff run, hosting football games in December, we've never done that before. Playing football in January, we've never done that before. Well, nobody's done that at Division III level, first time in January, but it's new challenges, having to navigate keeping a large team on campus during break period, but then into the national championship. I think the word I've been using is overwhelming in a positive way. Overwhelming by just the support that we've seen from our alumni, from our community, from our campus folks. Even to when we were in Canton, Ohio, we had a social reception the night before the game, and hundreds of people from every generation of alumni were in the room. People I thought we had lost along the way, people I thought we would never see again, and they just kept coming and coming, and that led into Championship Sunday. Once the gates opened for the game, they just kept coming and coming by the thousands. So it was just a really special. And then afterwards, it's media appearances for Coach Walker, and kudos to our sports information director, Trent Jackson, for kind of taking on the role of coordinating his media appearances. Just did a phenomenal job, and we just keep hearing from across campus, you know, you can't buy that type of exposure from a communications and marketing perspective. So it's just been overwhelming in all kinds of great ways.
Take me back to the moment you're on. At what moment, as you're sitting there in Canton, does it all like click in your head of like the journey that the football program has been on has reached the point that it has ultimately been trying to reach?
Yeah.
And Coach Walker's been there since 2011.
Yeah.
The growth over those 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
At what moment did that kind of set in?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it was walking into that social on Saturday night. You know, I had been with the team, you know, the day prior, and been with them to the stadium, got to have the student athletes see that experience of being in the championship venue. But I think it all came together for me when we walked in the room, that alumni social, and all of the people had come. You know, you had kind of heard anecdotally that there was going to be people there, but to see hundreds of people there, and again, from every generation, to me, that was kind of the pinnacle moment of, okay, we finally made it, and we are here, and we're just going to do it. There's no other option. All these people came this way. We're just going to win the game. And even, you know, during the game, you know, we were down 14-3, but there was never a moment where I felt that we weren't going to win the game. You know, we had been down before in other playoff games, and you just had this sense that at some point the defense was going to come through and get a stop, and then that was going to turn the tide. And going into halftime, got an interception in the end zone, and that was the moment I knew that, okay, we're just going to come back in the second half, and we're just going to win the game.
You mentioned the administrative challenge in keeping the team on campus all the way up until the kickoff in January.
Yeah.
How unique was that? What was the impact that it had on you and the rest of the staff?
Yeah. Well, one positive is that the residence halls stayed open, and they do during our J-term period. So that was one thing we didn't have to worry about, was housing the student athletes. But feeding the student athletes was a challenge. Dining services was closed. So figuring out how to feed that number of people consecutive days over holiday break periods. The community of River Falls really came out and supported us in a lot of different ways. Being able to put together meals was just a remarkable feat. Every restaurant down the line, the grocery store in town is a tremendous partner. So being able to cultivate those relationships, I think really was meaningful, because we could have been really scrambling, and for them to come together and really support us, we just really felt the support from the community during that entire period.
Being the first time played at that late in the season,
Yep.
Did you get a sense of how unique that was, and maybe what the impact from a viewership, awareness, exposure standpoint that had on the game and the program?
Yeah. Well, I think what was so interesting, because, you know, in Wisconsin in December, We played a quarterfinal game in below zero temperatures. We played a semifinal game. It was slightly above zero, but with 30-mile-an-hour winds that made it feel below zero. So you figure, okay, there's going to be some smaller crowds for those games. And then knowing the opponent was from further away than a normal conference opponent, but we still had 1,500 people show up. You talk to them, and what made you come to a game that was below zero? We just could not be there, was the response. So again, we knew there was people that were sticking with the program throughout all the down years, but then to see them actually show up at the playoff games was just so meaningful. And for the team to see that, people were they just kept coming. So I think that was really meaningful for the team to see that support throughout the playoff run, from fans coming to games, from their parents, hosting a Thanksgiving dinner in the field house, and then the community support along the way, I think was really meaningful for the players.
I want to look back over, Coach Walker had mentioned in the dozens of interviews he's done at this point about that he should have been fired multiple times.
Yeah.
Thinking back to, at the end of year 3, the football program is 3-27.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation that you have with him at that point is the nature of the conversation is what?
Yeah. Well, I was there when Matt was hired. I was actually on the search committee that hired Coach Walker. So I knew what the program was. He inherited a program that had less than 100 returning players. And at that time, our league allowed us to cut the roster to 100, so when you don't even report enough players to get to what the conference limit is. So I knew some of that backstory. I knew some of the challenges off the field that the program had, academic issues, conduct issues. So I think going into it, you had to have a little patience, knowing, a football program, you're not just going to turn around in 1 or 2 years. First, you have to go through a recruiting process. You have to get players to actually be interested and see the vision, the long-term vision. So I think off the bat, you had to have some patience. So year 3, he hasn't even gone through a full recruiting class.
Right.
So to say, okay, 3 years and that's it, when you don't even have a chance to get a full recruiting class, I think would have been really hard. But what I saw from the get-go was his vision for a culture for the program. And then throughout his time, the consistency. He never wavered from his message of what the team culture was going to be. And then you just kept seeing the improvements, academic success, improvements in conduct issues. We're not seeing those anymore. So everything off the field is exactly what you would want from a Division III program or even a Division I program. You want good people, you want to develop good students, and he was doing all of those things. He just wasn't getting the results on the field. So I think that helped with some of the patience and working through the 0-10 season, is everything else was aligning. And one thing too, at our campus, our programs aren't fully resourced. We're probably lower on staffing, lower on financial resources than some of our competitors. So how do you expect national championships when you aren't fully funding a program? So there's a bunch of different factors that play into those types of decisions, and it's not across the board. Maybe I had a little bit more patience with Coach Walker in the football program because of all the things I was seeing off the field, and those things were going in the right direction.
On top of, or I guess aside from the GPA going up, the academic success rate going up, the number of incidents with student athletes probably going down, how are you measuring the culture improving?
Yeah. Retention of the program.
Okay.
That was an issue prior to Coach Walker as well, was retention and then also just recruiting efforts too. So trying new ideas, going to new spaces. He took advantage of an international airport 40 miles away and took a gamble on going to the Southwest and was successful. Was our first class out of there successful? No, but it takes some time to figure out what are the right schools that are going to be a good fit for our program and our academic institution. And he did that fairly quickly and has had some success. So I think it's all of those different things playing into seeing the culture developing. And then, we do a student athlete survey at the end of the year, and hearing the feedback from the student athletes that, they really enjoy the coaches. They wish they were a little bit more successful on the field, but all of those things were playing into decisions to keep moving forward.
We've heard the piece about Coach Walker going to Arizona, and I think there were 7-10 student athletes on the roster this year that were from there. as the AD, when your coach says, hey, I'm going to try this, or I think this is the right thing that can help us
Yeah.
get to the next level, what is your response at that
Yeah.
point? Because given where the program is,
Yeah.
the fact that you are in a very competitive league,
Yep.
period, you are in a competitive space where geographically
Yeah.
the league is contained within a fairly
Yeah.
tight space. How did you receive that, and what was kind of the discussion?
Yeah. Well, I think he came prepared with the proposal to go to the Southwest. It's not only the WIC that we're competing against, but the NSIC Division II, where
Yeah.
they can offer a little bit of a scholarship. So Minnesota and Wisconsin has really talented football players, but we were losing out on some of those battles. And for a high school student, they're going to look at what are the most competitive programs, and at the time we weren't that. So we had to go outside of the area, think creatively to help build our competitive program, so then we can come back and recruit local students. And I think that's exactly the vision that's played out. We got some good talent from the Southwest. Local students started seeing the success of our program and wanted to be part of it. So I think it's all a long-term vision. And again, he's been really consistent about what his message is and what his plan's going to be. And I wish it wouldn't have taken 15 years. I know he wished it wouldn't have taken 15 years, but here we are, and that whole vision has come to fruition.
The other checking point is pre-pandemic. The program had a few 4-8 seasons after that start, so that you could see on the field success, and then it ticked back down a little bit. Where 19 before the pandemic, the program went 2-8.
Yeah.
How do you, as the AD, balance maybe all of the off-the-field improvements that you've seen with the on-field product and the balance, I guess, between those two?
Yeah. I think, again, it's conversations with Coach Walker. It wasn't that he was operating in a vacuum and I was just looking from the outside. We meet regularly and we talk about all these things. We would talk about the down years and maybe what played a factor. Was it some injuries that happened along the way? Was it something else that maybe was a factor that was maybe not controllable, but here's what I'm going to do to correct that? So anytime we had a slip, we talked about it. Here's the corrective measure. And again, he was just really consistent about all the other things that were happening. So it's just believing in his vision, believing in his culture and those types of things, and then allowing him a little bit of space to, maybe make a mistake and then come back and correct it.
How do you think about, through that same lens, the changes that a coach makes? And football's more unique in that there's more assistant coaches.
Yeah.
Where, the offense for your offense was bananas.
Yeah.
To put it lightly.
Yeah.
Then that was clear. That's been a clear differentiator, a difference maker for the program. How does the Coach Walker saying, all right, here's what we've done. I think we may go in this direction. This can help us get to where we need to go versus balancing his position as the head coach. Because as we look across all college athletics, it seems maybe easier at times to say if the program's not doing well, the coach is the leader of the program.
Yeah.
At least from an outside perspective, that's the way to potentially fix it.
Yeah.
But clearly, the internal cultural metrics, you're building the foundation for the championship house, if we can call it that.
Well, and I think that's another thing Coach Walker's been pretty outspoken about is the COVID year and taking some very significant risks and doing some really crazy things with his coaching staff. So moving Jake Wissing from offensive coordinator to defensive coordinator. And that was something we were talking about along the way too. Every year the offense was having a great season, but defense wasn't. Defense was having a great season, but offense wasn't. So it wasn't, one piece of the puzzle was always missing. So let's take Coach Wissing, who's a great person, bought into the culture, has a great mind, but things aren't quite working offensively. So let's shift him to defense. And that was an outrageous thing for him to do. Significant risk. Let's take a 26-year-old up-and-comer and promote him to offensive coordinator. Let's spend a whole year scheming up an offense that is totally different from everything that we've ever done. And all the pieces aligned. To have both offense and defense coming together, both having great seasons coming out of that COVID year, was really the differentiator, I think, for this program was having a whole year of no games, doing something completely different, but having a whole year to work out the kinks of what that new system is going to look like, and then come out and have a 9-2 year, win the Isthmus Bowl the year after COVID.
What impact did institutional investment have along this trajectory that you've been on?
I wish I could say there was significant institutional investment along the way, and not to say we haven't had supportive administration. Always have been supportive, but it's no secret UW system has gone through significant budget cuts during Coach Walker's time. So to say there's been significant investments, I can't honestly say that. But have we been creative about finding ways to fund different things? Yes. We leaned on some alumni and some supporters to help with our foundation and building up that, finding ways to creatively fund assistant coach positions. So we've had to be really creative. We've had to take some risks. But with some support from campus, just not quite as much as you always hope for, but those things are coming.
And how have you, over that tenure, maybe stepping back from football to the entire athletic department, how, as a leader, have you tried to both be creative and handle, you can't make up all of the challenge, all of the cuts that may come up from a state budget? How do you continue to push forward when the dollars from your primary funding source get kind of pulled away from you?
And I think our staff has really open conversations. Every time that there is any budget discussions, we are talking openly about, okay, what are our priorities? And we've been very consistent. Our priorities are our staff and our student athletes. Okay, what is not part of that mix? And that's where we're going to focus on any reductions. But we're going to protect the things that are most critical, which is our coaches and our student athletes. So that's how we've approached. We've had, unfortunately, many of those conversations with the UW system, and not to slight anything there, but we've gotten creative about revenue sources as well. We had a chancellor that helped us get an advancement officer put in place, so new revenue sources coming, which I think will help us with some of those challenges and offset some of those things. But I think any AD that you would talk to, finances is always the number one challenge. No matter how many resources you have at any level, the financial resources are always going to be the biggest challenge. So how creative can you be with the resources that you're given?
Football's not the only sport that's been on a super high as of late. But I'm curious, across the conference, there are certain programs that have been dominant in their respective space. How do you think about trying to support as many or all of your programs to aspire to a championship or reach a championship aspiration, while everybody else is also super competitive in whichever sport we pick? There's probably a school in your conference that's pushing for a title.
Well, I think that's the fun thing, and coaches are competitive. So if they see another program within your department, so women's hockey has been our dominant program for years. But I think what's fun about a program being successful, and when women's hockey won their first national championship, and then when they backed it up with a back-to-back national championship, our other coaches see that and they want to be part of that. I think that gives everyone a little extra motivation. Same thing when you look across the league. If you're a coach of a sport and someone in your league is super competitive, if you're a volleyball coach and you see UW Oshkosh winning a national title, or if you're a cross-country track and field coach and you see UW lacrosse repeating across the year, it just gives you a little extra motivation to want to get to that level. And I think what's fun about the WIAC is once we get to the NCAA playoffs, we're all rooting for each other. So every school reached out after our football championship. Same with women's hockey. And we do the same. Oshkosh wins a national championship in volleyball. We're all reaching out to support them. So we all become WIAC fans once we're to the NCAA playoffs and through the conference season. But I think seeing the national championships, it just motivates everyone to want to get to that level.
As you continue to push the River Falls Athletic Department forward, how do you plan to tweak maybe the focus, the message that you will communicate to your coaches, staff, student athletes as well, to help to continue to push forward?
Yeah. I think it's, again, we go back to consistency. I think our message as a department has been consistent, that we're going to be the best that we possibly can, and we're going to strive for championships. And now that you've gotten a couple, I think everyone can see it. You know, it used to be a vision, and we used to be the school with so much potential. But what's so great now is we don't have to talk about the potential. We've done it. So now let's replicate it across all of our sports. So I think it just adds to the motivation.
Over the next year or two, the improvement that you are, or the initiative that you're focused most on is what?
I think for me personally, it's resources for the department and finding ways to better support our coaches and our student athletes. Again, we go back to what are our main priorities, and those are it's our people and our programs. So for me, my job is to find ways to support them the best I can.
Excellent. A lot to look forward to.
Yeah.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you.